5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
And welcome back. We are here, episode 2, the Live State of Mind podcast. I am Coach Dale, or Dale Lively, and I'm here actually for chapter 2 of what was the very first episode of the Live State of Mind podcast, which was 2 hours long somehow and ended with an amazing 38 push-ups. My good friend, OCR athlete, the OCR police, live ambassador, and most importantly, math teacher and father, Jason Williams. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. I have to tell you, just to jump off into it, because I think that's the best way. I've gotten actually some decent feedback about our first episode, and I think it's okay to talk about that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Pump it up. Like I was excited to see how many people listened to the entire podcast. I know it was a long thing to listen to, but you know, when people were talking about my push-ups or things that happened at the end of the podcast, it was like, you know, showing that they were able to listen to it. And sometimes I think that it's hard for people to listen to me for more than 3 minutes. So
right.
that was pretty cool.
Well, there was I actually got some feedback that people were using as the background to their long runs, which was super cool.
So we owe it to people to talk so that they have something to listen to on their long runs.
That's right. And I love that. I think it's very, very cool that it was well received. And I think there's 160 YouTube views, and I'm pretty sure 148 of them were of either me or you viewing it. You know, so I think a solid 12, you know, maybe from unique listeners. How about that? Huh?
I mean, we set the goal at 6, so you know, double that up is pretty good.
That's right.
And we've already got upgrades in the studio, I see.
Yes, of course. So instead of just the one mic, we went with 2. And we got a little mixer. And so hopefully it sounds a lot clearer. And if the levels are crazy and, you know, you're hearing phones vibrate, we've tried to eliminate as many of those as possible. But I'm sure there's going to be a couple that sneak through a couple times, you know. But it's a work in progress, right?
Yeah, and if I sound a little sadder, it's because I have my own microphone and I'm not, like, having to snuggle up next to Dale during the podcast.
You're so silly.
We'll see.
So silly. Mm. So I actually, do you remember the last time that we were here?
Yeah.
I had a big race the following day.
How many Ks did you run?
50, sir. And boy, did I learn a lot. It was an intense 5 hours and 20 minutes.
Wow.
Everything that I had run up until that point was about 22 or 23 miles, and I never realized how much strategy was involved. You know, if you go out running like a super short race, it's like one and done. It's like you give enough fuel, you're not going to stop really unless, you know, you have to grab some water at one of the water coolers or whatever a couple miles in. But for the most part, it was an amazing experience.
Were there water stations throughout? Because you had to do laps, right?
So, exactly right. It was 11-mile loops for this one, so it ended up being like 32 miles. And there was an aid station, right? Mm-hmm. And it was like a buffet of all of the best things ever. And there was a gentleman there, and that's what he did. He came and set up, and there was gummy bears, there was cookies, there was peanut butter and jelly. People were taking shots of whiskey. Wow. You're 25 miles into a race. You're taking a shot of whiskey. What are we doing right now with our life?
You'd never see me again.
By the way. I know. I'm thinking I don't drink, but there's no way that would be the time I'd go, you know what? My legs feel awful. I can barely walk. What do I want? Oh, how about a shot of Fireball?
There you go.
You know, but that was the difference, was fueling was important. Mm. You're putting such a big demand on your body for such a long period of time. Socks are important. Vaseline, really important.
Did you change your shoes and socks, or did you?
So that's a great question, because that was a very critical move that I made. Up until this point, I knew it was at Croom. Anyone that's ever been to Croom, it's in Brooksville, Florida, and it's kind of like an ATV and a motocross track. and there's some rolling hills. It's not like super aggressive, and it had been relatively dry. So the shoe that I had been doing a lot of my training runs in was the Hoka Carbon X. Are you a Hoka fan?
Oh yeah.
How great are they?
I haven't tried the Carbon X, but the Cliftons I have. I like those for longer runs, but I'm no shoe aficionado compared to you.
Listen, sidebar. I remember 8 years ago walking into a Fit to Run and looking at those shoes and as a joke, like picking one up and going, people wear these? Not knowing like 3 months later, I would be the biggest like Hoka disciple ever. They're amazing.
Yeah, I think that's everybody's first reaction when they see them. They're like, oh,
People wear
my
these?
first thing, like, oh man, I'm going to be instantly taller. This is going to be great. And like more of a joke, but then you end up wearing them. Like, okay, these are great.
So I had a little bit of knee issue when I started to run, and don't let me forget my point on the race. But when that's when I found them was I was running in a lot of these minimal shoes, and someone was like, "Hey, have you tried the Cliftons?" And I went and tried the Cliftons, and they were amazing. It feels literally like the difference between driving like a sports car and like a Cadillac, right? That's how it feels. It's like it's super cushy, and it feels like you can run for forever. And from there, they've continued to get better and better. What I found was, though, because I did a lot of racing on the trail, I would train in these Cliftons, and they would be super squishy. And then I would get on the trail for like an OCR race or a trail race, and I would use Innovates or the Reebok Supers, and they have super low profile, and they don't have any cushion. Right. And it just didn't translate well. Like I just didn't feel like my foot was solid. I felt like my calf was weak. And actually, they came out with a new pair called a Hoka Carbon X, and I'm a huge fan. And listen, don't just hear this podcast and go buy a bunch of Carbon X's because anyone tells you to. It has to be right for you and your gait and how your foot strikes the ground, and pronation and supination, they play a big role in it. But those were the shoes that I decided to wear at this race. It was strictly a road shoe. It was a fast shoe. They're super light. I think you could only run like 200 or 250 miles in them. And that was the shoe that I chose. And I brought another one just in case. But we found out the night before that it was going to be raining.
Well, every time you go there, it rains, right?
Dude, I mean like the worst rain. I don't mean like, hey, it's drizzling. I mean torrential downpour. It's survival. Bear Grylls instincts kick in when you're out there. So we were good. It was a wise decision up until about the third lap. And a third of the way into the third lap is when the bottom fell out of it. Oh. And that made things a little bit interesting. But
now, going through the race,
yeah.
What are you carrying with you, and what are you leaving at like the lap point as far as nutrition, water?
Got it. So I want to be as light as possible for the first lap. And the second, you want to be as light as possible all the time. You only want to take what you absolutely need, but you don't want to be underprepared either. So I have a Camelback on, which is basically a little mini backpack, and it has a bladder in it that carries, I think, a liter or a liter and a half of water. And there's a couple pockets. I had some vitamin B. I had some ibuprofen. And I had some Sour Patch Kids, right? And I usually either use those or Fireballs.
Not the whiskey?
No, not the no, actual atomic Fireballs. Okay. Let's be very clear. And again, you try to stay as light as possible. And then I have my phone in my backpack also. But I try to stay on a pretty strict regimen of taking an ibuprofen and vitamin B about every hour. And then, of course, I'll have goo, which is kind of like almost like an energy supplement with electrolytes, a little bit of sugar, and some caffeine. And that's kind of, you feel like a pack mule sometimes, but all of it's really, really necessary when you're out there.
Nice. Now, you're talking strategy. So between laps, are you going straight through, continuing, or are you taking a break? Resting, filling up with anything, refilling your bladder, anything like that? So, yes. And I think that was one of the main differences for me, is that when we get in a race sometimes, at least I do, Jay, is it feels like it's just like wide open. Like, let's just go. We can pace ourselves. We have a little strategy, but it's just like gun goes off and then you run as hard as you can and then you cross the finish line. Right. Because it was so long, you definitely have to pace yourself. So in between the 11-mile loops, I would stop at the car, make sure I had enough water. I had peanut butter sandwiches on white bread just for some real quick sugar if I needed them.
and I would stop there for about 3 to 4 minutes and then take back off on my next lap. I did run into a little bit of issue on the first lap, which was as soon as I got back to the car, the bladder from my Camelback, for whatever reason, I could not get the lid to seal. It was driving me insane, to the point where I finally ripped the bladder out, threw it on the ground, and grabbed a liter of Fiji and was carrying it for the other half of the next lap before I shoved it in my backpack.
Oh, wow. So I guess it was good that you realized it instead of taking off and having it just leak all over you.
Exactly. I mean, that would have been super uncomfortable. What would have been the difference? I got poured on about an hour from then, you know.
But how much of that is going through your head now, like, oh, man, like, this didn't work out? Like, I have something going wrong in the race. Do you have, like, those demons inside of your brain, like, oh, maybe this isn't my day? Or I'm sure when you run that long, you've got your ups and downs where you're, you know, there's something telling you, man, this is not my day, or did it just not happen?
The whole thing is a roller coaster. It is, for the first 15 to 18 miles, you're enjoying the scenery. I'm listening to Kanye West worship music, you know what I mean? It's like everything is amazing. Then the water thing started, couldn't get my lid on. I tried to stay focused. I got caught in this spot where if I ran with the bottle in my hand, and a liter is a weird size. It was a square, you know, so it was already weird. I could run with it in my hand, but the problem was, and I could drink it while I'm running, but it's super awkward, and I had to keep changing hands, right? So I ended up throwing it in my backpack. I finally got it to fit. Only problem with that is every time I wanted to drink, now I would have to stop. But, you know, I decided about halfway through the race, like we talk a little bit about mindset, I decided halfway through the race, it was a distance that I wasn't comfortable with, and I didn't have any context. I didn't have any frame of reference, right? I couldn't say, well, you've run this far before, despite how you feel, you're going to do it this time.
Right.
I think it was more about just having faith in my training, and like, which is a little bit what we talked about, and deciding that I didn't just want to finish it. And that, I swear to you, it was like halfway through the race, I went from running, I don't want to say running scared, but having that narrative in your head play, which is like, am I going to finish this? What happens if I don't finish it? Blah, 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 blah. And like that just kind of spirals to, wait a second, you're going to gut this out, and you're going to try and finish at the top. So it was already like, I'm assuming that I'm going to finish. And that really, I felt like it put me in a better space mentally.
Yeah, I'm trying to compare this to anything I've done, and the closest thing was I did a Toughest Mudder 8-hour race in Chicago a couple years back.
Well, I would say, that's actually almost double the amount of time I was out there.
But the biggest difference was it wasn't a set distance. So it was always like, those were 5-mile loops. So I went in with the goal of 5 laps, so to run 25 miles, which I had never run that far before. Ended up doing 30, but it wasn't like I have to finish like X amount of laps, you know, it was, or like, will I finish? It was just, all right, if I get through this lap, I get through it. If I don't, you know. So.
That to me feels like a bigger mind game, though.
Yeah. There was my 5th lap was way like my worst lap. I was pouting a lot and just saying this is stupid. And it's like, I feel like I'm the type of person that can gut it out if it's tough. If it's like, I can deal with that.
Is that not the greatest feeling in the world, too?
Yeah. And
honestly.
It's like, that's when I don't have the doubts of like, I'm going to get through this. It's hard, but I'm going to do it. I have a problem like when I start saying this is stupid and this is not worth it. And then it's like that of like, I don't even want to do this anymore type of thing. And
what are the chain of events that lead to that type of thinking, though? Is it like what feels like a micro failure after micro failure, or is it more just like related to how you're feeling with your legs? And
I think it's just a combination of everything. Like that 5th lap was when I failed like my first obstacle, and so I had to do like a penalty loop.
Do you remember which one it was?
It was just something silly. I don't even know what it was, but no, it was like a shock thing where I didn't like you had to pick up a ring with a metal pole and put it on a hook, but you're standing in water.
Sounds like a bar game.
Operation was something like Operation. So it would shock you, and apparently you could have kept trying if you got shocked, but I didn't know that. So once I got shocked, I put it down. There's like a mile penalty, so I had to run an extra mile, and it was cold. And then I had to get into like their ice bath thing. So at that point, I'm just being a big baby.
Yeah.
And 'cause I'm like, it's like, 6 hours in, and I'm just like pouting. I'm like, this is dumb, and I'm just gonna get through this. If I get to this lap, I'm at 25. But then I start thinking, I don't want this to be my last lap.
Yeah.
And I started doing the math, and I'm like, okay, if I can finish this lap before the cutoff, or if I finish this lap by a certain amount of time, I'll have time to do another lap if I hurry.
Yeah.
And before the cutoff. So my last lap, I think, was one of my fastest laps, and I ended up finishing like on a good note, which that was the goal. Was like at that point, I don't want to finish being like this was my worst lap, and I was just in a bad mood type of thing. I wanted it to be a good experience, and it ended up being great.
So, I mean, Tough Mudder is a pretty big brand, which right now it seems like they're in the middle of a bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Are you watching all of that go down?
Somewhat.
I mean, what is the deal?
I don't know. I know it's going back and forth, but there's been so much information, I really haven't had a chance to look too much into it, but I hope it turns out okay.
Well, Tough Mudder is an OCR race, and they also have World's Toughest Mudders, and I mean, they are. Their claim is that they're the toughest, and they put out some long, like ultra endurance type of races. The World's Toughest Mudder is 24 hours.
24
is that
hours.
correct?
Yep.
And it's basically as many miles or as laps as you can get in.
Right.
In the 24 hours.
And the big thing is with them is they preach like teamwork. Like they have obstacles that require people to help each other out.
Yeah.
So it's not like other races where you're not
Oh,
allowed
that's
to help people out.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's cool where you'll see like one of the top athletes like Ryan Atkins go up a ramp wall, and he stops and he helps 2 or 3 people, and he's racing for first, and he stops and he helps people before he goes on. And then
Now, is this any Tough Mudder, or is this we're talking about World's Toughest?
any Tough Mudder. Yeah, like this the one I was talking about, the 8-hour one, was the first one I'd ever done. So it was funny because I like going in, I was told by people, I'm like, I don't know, I've never run Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, when you get up something, turn back. Like somebody might help you up, and that's okay. Just make sure you return the favor and help the person behind you. So the first big obstacle I get to was like a warped wall, and I am notoriously bad at those. And I get there, and there's 2 guys, and I'm like, okay, so they're going to help me, reach a hand out. And as soon as I start running, they turn around and leave, and I'm like barely hanging on to the top, like struggling to get up, and I just start yelling like, "What happened to this teamwork stuff you guys are talking about?" And then from that, I remember from that point on, the rest of the race, I did that wall by myself just because of that. But other than that,
spite those 2 gentlemen.
yeah. But
I'll show them.
and there's like some cool obstacles where you're required to use teamwork, and I'm trying not to lose my brain power here, but there's Blockness Monster, where it's like these humongous blocks in the water, and you have to go over the blocks, but it's almost impossible to do by yourself. So people would climb on top of them, and then that'll get the momentum to turn. And when it's turning, it'll carry somebody up on top.
Got you.
So then that person keeps the momentum, and it requires people. So of course, being the nerd I am, I was watching videos on how to do it.
Yes.
So then I get there the first time, and there's people doing it, and they're not doing it like the way the video showed.
Right.
And I'm like, guys, didn't you watch the video on how to do this? And they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, it's just me. I'm that guy. So sorry. But yeah, it was a fun experience. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but I guess that's what we do.
What does something like that teach you? And I mean,
as far as the teamwork thing, or
well, I mean, as far as doing an 8-hour race, like, what did you learn about that?
It really teaches you like what you have inside of you, and like digging deep, and like a lot of little things. I remember one of the first things I learned was not to be chatty in between laps, because I was grabbing some nutrition, then I ended up talking to somebody, and I'm like, oh, I'm still in a race. But I think that the biggest thing I learned was that 5th lap when I was at my darkest time. Like, you're gonna have those moments where you feel, and the funny moment that got me to turn my mental part around was I was freezing. I was saying this is cold and dumb, and I don't even know why I'm here. And the leader of the race, Ryan Atkins, jogged by me, and he was wearing no shirt. He's like, good job. And I'm like, this guy's not wearing a shirt. And I'm sitting there in
Right.
warm clothes,
Right.
like complaining. I'm like, all right, just suck it up. And
Cold
stop
is
doing this.
something else.
Yeah.
Push, I can push,
Mhm.
but the cold, that's a different animal, especially for us in.
Keep in mind, this was in Chicago, but it was July.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't like, I don't want to sit there and say it was like 20 degrees. You know, it was cold for me being, living in Florida. But
Wow.
it was, yeah, like I said, he was wearing no shirt. It was probably, if I had to guess, like in the 50s. But yeah.
I just think it's amazing that when you start to realize, like, ultimately what your body can do. Like, we tested in here and doing group classes and OCR events, and it gets tested to a certain degree. But when you have a mental threshold or a mental hurdle in your head of, okay, this is all the context I have is 22 or 23 miles. That's what it was before this race.
At what point?
22 or 23.
At what point in your race, if there was one, did you feel like you were hitting a wall? Like,
so I will be completely honest. When the mind frame changed about lap number 2, which was I'm no longer going to be focused on just finishing. That to me felt like running scared. Like, oh my gosh. It's like fearing the wall, like fearing the breakdown. Oh, here it is. Oh my gosh, this is what we've thought about and talked about for the last 4 hours.
Right.
It wasn't that. I wanted to go proactive with it. And I literally switched my mindset to go, okay, despite the fact that I don't have any context for this, I'm going to push towards the top. And I finished 5th, I believe, overall.
Nice.
I think had I not taken another 8 or 9 minutes at the first lap turn where my camelback got messed up, maybe it's 4th, but then maybe I go out too fast, and it's such a long race. So I'd hate to say that cost me anything, but my mindset changed, Jay. It completely changed from just wanting to finish to want to finish near the top. And you have 97 runners for having to run an ultra marathon. And I was really, really pleased with finishing 5th, man.
It's awesome. Did you see other people in between laps, like doing the same thing you're doing, like getting their stuff together, and then you're kind of eyeing each other, like, oh, I got to get out here?
Yes, but I'll tell you what, there was 100K going on at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So a 50 kilometers, 31 miles, 100K is obviously double that. So that was something that put things into perspective also. So here I am finishing, right, and watching people doing the 100K. They're only at their halfway point.
Right.
That's insane,
Yeah. Those ultramarathon people, they're something.
But you know what I saw? And it really, really paralleled. It really paralleled OCR, which was we realize how tough of a feat this is. And, it is about each of us individually competing against each other. But it's also about us competing against the course. That's why you have a volunteer who sits in what felt like an oasis coming around that corner. It was a white tent. I could see it through the trees. It was so amazing. You get there. It was like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There was gummy bears, and what tasted amazing was Coca-Cola.
Really?
Oh my gosh. I don't drink regular Coke anymore, but it was so amazing. But there's a reason why you have people like that volunteering for an event like this. It's because it's tough. But I'll tell you, here's the other side, is finished 5th, 5 hours and 20 minutes. My strategy going into it was to go out, make sure I didn't go out hot. I wanted to sit at like 8:45s or 9-minute miles. And I knew the terrain wasn't going to be crazy, and I was able to accomplish that for the most part. What's crazy is the winner did it in 4 hours and 10 minutes.
Wow.
He beat me by an hour 10. He didn't stop at all.
Wow.
So I think those little pauses and those little stops, they allow the body to recover, and you can feel a major difference for the next couple of miles. Episode 2, and that would be our second little flub there. So in any case, Jay, 4 hours and 10 minutes was an unbelievable time, and that's what won it. And I'm pretty sure, and it's safe to say, that he probably went around all of those loops without stopping. And that's awesome, and that's what he does. You know what I mean? I was thrilled, and for never having done that before, I was really, really happy with the way that it turned out, for sure.
Do you see more of these longer races in your future?
I do. This was a great training run all in all for the ultimate goal, which is there's a race in Virginia. It's called the Grayson Highlands 50-miler, and that is on the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, wow.
The good news is it's a state park and there's a bunch of Shetland ponies there. So if I get really tired, you may see me just riding a pony across the finish line.
Nice. Wow. But at the same time, you've also run shorter distances. You ran a 5K not too long ago, right?
Last week I did. Yeah,
How'd you do?
We did okay. Finished pretty close to the front.
Close to the front?
It was okay. All right. You know what was crazy? Finished first. Which was, let's be very, very clear. This is not a state race. The heavy hitters weren't out there, and it's so funny. I ran a 19:38 for a 5K. Is it fast? Okay. Yeah. Versus the general population. Is it fast for any like seasoned runner? No. Come on, let's be honest. But it's funny too when I tell that story to people who are actual runners. They'll be like, "Wait, so what place did you get?" I'll be like, "I got first." And they don't want to offend me. They're like, "Oh, okay. You ran a 19:38 and got first. I mean, that's fast and all, but how did you get first with that?" It's so funny.
But isn't it funny also how we do something like, oh, won a race, but can't, like, almost there's something you'd be like, yeah, but the heavy hitters weren't out there. You know,
I
it's
know.
like you ran as fast as you needed to run. If somebody was pushing you faster, you never know what would have happened.
That's true.
And it's funny how we do that to ourselves, kind of like, well, you know, it's, you know, it was all right, but, and then it's funny too because
it's kind of self-deprecating, isn't it?
Yeah, but because like I said, like that was, if you're winning a race, you run as fast as you need to run. You might not necessarily, you know, you're not, if you run a 15-minute 5K, but second place is running at 20, I mean, maybe you're just going to run just faster than that person, you know? So you never know. I think it's a fast time.
Well, here's, and listen, I'm not going to sit here and toot my own horn. And I love 1938. I think that's awesome.
Toot it.
Toot. So, but here's what I think is cool, is that I did a 30-miler, or 32-miler like a week or two before. That's where my head is at right now.
Right.
That's what my body is kind of tuned for, is more distance. So to still be able to do that, I was pretty pleased. We actually had a funny story. Who I was really impressed with was a guy who has been training at our gym. Actually, he's 16 years old. And this was his very first race ever, and ran a 20:02. So that's to only beat him by 20 or 25 seconds, and he was pushing, you know, and I was super, super impressed. So awesome. Live Training Center was able to go to an event. It was called the Soul 5K, Supporters of Law Enforcement. We were able to sponsor that race also and represent by finishing first and second, which was really good for us, our facility, and our brand. And it was really, really cool, man. And to be able to do that for law enforcement and public service, that's literally what we're about.
It's great to run a race, but also for a great cause. And I saw you gave a little advertisement as you crossed the finish line.
That took me a long time to work the nerve up to do that because I actually went up to the race director afterwards, and I was like, if I ruined that, I apologize. If I was just totally uncouth, but I've always wanted to do that. You know what I thought about doing? I thought about changing my name on the race registration to Come to Live Training Center, just in case I get called to the podium. They at least have to announce it, right? So I think that would be pretty funny.
Yeah, Come to would be a weird first name, but
well, as long as they did first and last name,
right.
But then I was worried that they would announce last name first and then first name. Then I'm like, how do I know?
Right.
Live Training Center, come to. It's like that would be weird.
So it'd just be like Yoda. So.
But it's been a blast, man. I love racing. It's really good. I love being in the community. I love having, being represented in the community well. And, of course, finishing the first in any race, there was like 300 people, 250, 300 people there, which is really, really good. And I won't say the funniest thing, is we ended up on the law enforcement Facebook page of me crossing the finish line, yelling, Live Training Center, Palmetto, Florida. Holler at your boy. That's what I said. I was mentioning to Danielle, I was like, I always knew I would end up on a law enforcement Facebook page or a website. I just didn't think it would be like this, honestly.
That's a preferable way to do it, though, I would think.
100%.
So let me ask you this. So you did well on this long race, the first race of that type of distance. Then you turn around and win the short distance.
Yes.
Any worries of complacency because you did so well in multiple races?
Dude, complacency is the killer. That's what we're fighting.
I'm giving you this as a warning.
Yes.
Actually, because turn this back on me, because
I will receive
that's
that.
what I'm here for. The year I ran the toughest mudder, the 8-hour race, and like I said, my goal was 30 miles. My goal was 25 miles. I ran 30, and I was like, I've never run that far in my life. I was very excited about that.
Yeah.
The next week was the U.S. OCR Championships, and I was thinking it's really dumb of me to do this long race and turn around and go to the U.S. Championship the next week in Texas, and I ended up getting third place in the short course.
Sure.
So I got a bronze medal, and I was just like, that was like a pretty awesome week.
Yeah.
And I know that I think mentally in my head, I was like, all right, I'm good for a bit. And I did get a little complacent. Yeah. And then had to work my way back after that. Cause I think I was just kind of like, I'm good. Like I was satisfied with what I did. And I think the fire was gone for a little bit because I was excited and I was happy and I was, I guess, celebrating,
I think if that's going to happen, I definitely understand that. I think if that's going to happen, it'll happen after the 50 miler though.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be my goal right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that distance with that elevation, which I don't think it's like 5,000 or 7,000 feet,
Wow.
which, mind you, at this Brooksville race a couple weeks ago, Chrome Zoom, shout out Tampa Races. They've done a great job of putting on these types of races. But in any case, there was like 1,300 feet over the 31 miles.
Nice.
I mean, that may as well be Mount Everest to someone living in Bradenton.
Right.
But I think if it's going to happen, it'll happen after the 50 miler. Maybe take a little break. I got my right ankle right now I'm getting some therapy on, and I'm making sure to take care of it. That's the other thing is the recovery side,
Right.
which I'm really trying to spend a lot of time on, rolling and stretching and getting therapy and acupuncture and all sorts of stuff. It's like a different train of thought. And I was just talking to some clients the other day about how stretching and recovery, too often we do it once there's already a problem.
Right.
It becomes like a reactive thing. It's like, oh, okay, I have this pain now. What do I do about this pain in my hamstring? You know what I mean? I feel like I pulled it. And then that kind of prompts the stretching. But if we can get diligent about it before the problems start, then it could actually prevent issues and help us stay pain-free and help our performance to go up.
Right.
How do you stretch, or do you stretch?
I do. It's funny because
Wait on a second.
What?
You did yoga today.
I did yoga this morning before
Yeah,
OCR
what are we
class.
talking about? There you go.
Yeah. It's funny because I started thinking, it's funny when you talk to someone who doesn't work out, and they say, I just don't have the time. And then what is our reaction? We say, you got to make time.
Yeah.
You got to make time in your day.
But that's true, though.
And and then someone turns around to you and go, oh, do you stretch? Well, I don't have time. I work out.
Yeah.
But I don't have time. It's the same train of thought, but the same people that are telling the people that don't work out, you got to make time, will turn around and say, but I don't have time to stretch.
Correct.
And it's the same thing. It's just kind of funny how...
You know what it always comes down to? Well, I would say it's a pain intolerance. It's like there has to be something to trigger you. There has to be a need great enough for you to make time, right? Oh, I have a pain in my leg, so because of this pain, I am going to carve out some extra time to stretch. But sometimes until that happens, we don't recognize the importance of it.
And it's the old, growing up, you hear no pain, no gain.
Yeah.
When you go to work out, you're in pain, or you're doing, not in pain like this, you're getting hurt, but you're pushing yourself. It's hard. So then when you're stretching, it's not that same mindset. It almost feels like, all right, if I'm spending 30 minutes doing this, shouldn't I feel something where I'm pushing?
Okay, that brings up a great point, which is we want the gratification. We want the payoff.
Right.
And we're not getting it instantly. And I think that it doesn't burn calories. Here's something else that no one wants to talk about. It doesn't make up for anything crappy we ate the hour before.
Right.
Or it's not going to prepare our bodies for what we're getting ready to hammer. We're going to go out to Burger King, so I'm going to go run so I can, tolerate the whatever it is that we put into our bodies. So the payoff is delayed. The gratification is delayed. And what I tell clients is we work out because we want to be healthy. We want to see a tangible, physical result. I want to be able to look in the mirror and see the benefit of it. Or look at my performance. I need to see it, right? I got to be able to quantify it. Sometimes what the benefit of stretching is in what we don't see,
Mhm.
not in what we do see. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, and I think if you kind of change your mind thought or your thinking that way, where okay, the stretching may allow me to work out longer or run a little longer because I'm not in pain,
Or to not be
you know?
pain? Yeah,
Yeah.
to not be in pain.
Yeah, so it is kind of there. It's just like that actual stretching part isn't the payoff. Where we've got to reset the way we're thinking about it.
I do think it's kind of like nutrition too, in
Mhm.
that there's so many different trains of thought. There's so
Mhm.
many different philosophies. There's so many different, avenues on what to stretch, what not to stretch. Do I stretch the IT band? Do I roll the IT band? What do I do with the IT band? Like, there's all of these different modalities and things, and a lot of it is personal. A
Mhm.
lot of it is, where do you see benefit?
Mhm.
Some people like to do yoga. Some people hate a yoga studio. Some people do well at home with a DVD. Some people love to roll. Some people don't like to roll. There are benefits for everything, but ultimately it's about what is setting you up to be the healthiest version of yourself. And here's what we know. It comes down to really three areas when we're talking about physicality. It is the exercise portion, right? How often, the frequency, the intensity. It is the recovery portion. We're talking about mobility, flexibility, tissues, tendons, ligaments, joints. Like, how are we moving? Are we efficient? Are we pain-free? And then it's nutrition. What are we putting into our body? And when all three of those are hitting on all cylinders, then the chances of a client having long-term success is a lot greater.
It's awesome.
Pretty sweet, right?
Yeah.
I want to share this with you. How is your when you go out for a training run,
Mhm.
right? What are you thinking about?
I guess depends on the run.
I feel like we could have a 3-hour conversation. I would love to get other people's opinions.
I mean, if I know, like a couple weeks ago, I had to run 800s or about half mile.
Are you talking about speed work?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
And-
different.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Yeah, I was dreading that.
That is, I just don't want to die. I hate my life. God, this is horrible. Why do I do this? I could be eating pizza right now.
But are you talking about like a longer run or?
I'm talking about either a long run or a tempo run, not necessarily one where you're only focused on like effort and output. Like, I need to run hard.
Mhm.
Let's say you go out for a long run, right?
Mhm.
Let's say you go out for 10 or 12 miles.
Mhm.
First off, what are you listening to? And then secondly, what are your thoughts? What do you find your mind trailing to?
Oh, it goes everywhere. Obviously, I'm listening to the, live podcast.
On repeat, right? That one episode, just keep looping it.
If I'm listening to that, it's probably gonna be a really long run, so that's good. But usually, I'm looking at my heart rate, and like the last long run I did,
What watch do you have?
I have the Garmin Forerunner 235.
Do you like it?
I like it.
It gives you real-time heart rate info?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
I just use a wrist. Some people prefer the chest strap, and
Bam,
but-
second question.
Yeah.
What data fields are important to you when you look down at your watch?
if I'm running a long run, I'm just looking at my heart rate, and I'm trying not to look at too much because I feel like if because based on what you've done that week and everything, like sometimes my heart rate will jump up, and I have to slow down because I'm only doing a heart rate run. I'm not trying to look at my speed, and sometimes I'm going slower, sometimes I'm going faster. Like last time I did a long run, I was getting frustrated because I had to slow down, and I thought I should have been going faster at that heart rate. Like my
Right.
heart rate was just higher than normal, and I was getting agitated because I'm like, why am I going so slow? And so at that point, that's all I was thinking about, and so I was getting annoyed at that. So that was a little rough, but I actually stopped about halfway through, and like it was a bathroom break and water break, and then once I started back up, it was kind of more, it normalized to
Right.
what I was used to,
Right.
and then I kind of it was just back to running. But I remember the whole time thinking though, like we all have those days,
Mhm.
Sometimes like when Brittany's running, she'll have a day, and I'll be like, we all have those days, but I'm like, all right, well it's my turn, so I
Right.
can't be a hypocrite and tell her that we all have those days. It's my turn, so you're just trying to stay positive and trying to not get in your head. And of course, me being math guy, I'm just doing the math. Like if I'm going this slow, it's going to take me this long to finish this run, and that's like going to be night.
That's hilarious.
So like I need to speed up at this point, but then it defeats the purpose because my heart rate gets
Spikes,
too high.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you find yourself? Well, let me just tell you this. I feel like I have the most creative thoughts when I'm out running. I think part of it is getting out of my own way, and then I'm sure endorphins have a lot to do with it. But literally, there are many times where I will be out on a run, and we'll stop and either record something or send a text message to someone about a new venture that I want to start, or sometimes I'll make a phone call. And I want to preface that by saying, or preface this by saying that, this was the thought that I had the other day, and I think it's a good topic of discussion, okay? And I'm going to try to tie this up as best as possible. All right. So I started to think about a fitness facility and improving health and wellness and comparing it to a restaurant and the service that you receive at a restaurant versus the service that you receive at a gym. So here's what I was thinking. And this isn't about a good gym or a bad gym. This is just literally a thought, okay? When you walk into a restaurant, right, you expect to be greeted, right? At the door, they ask you how many people are going to be in your party. You sit down at a table. You got nice silverware. You expect it to be clean. They've prepared for you to come. They hand you a menu. They give you suggestions. You then make an order based on what they have on this list, right? And it goes to a professional in the back who has a ton of experience. He knows how to whip up ingredients. He's got all the perfect, hopefully you're at the right restaurant. He's got all the perfect ingredients, and he's making these specific dishes, and they bring them out to you, and they taste amazing. And then you leave healthy and happy, right?
Right.
My job is not to go there and cook. My job is to go there and be served from someone that is at the top of their field, hopefully, right?
Right.
And I started to think about that in terms of health and fitness and how different that is in the health and wellness industry. Whereas, if you compared a restaurant of sorts, or we use that same analogy and compared it to almost like a commercial gym setting. And again, there are good gyms and bad. This isn't about good or bad. This is just really taking a step back and looking at how do we get our client to have the best result, or how do we make sure that our community has a very low turnover rate, right? A restaurant, you're not going to walk into, seat yourself, go, man, what do I feel like eating? And then go back into a kitchen that has just a bunch of random ingredients. And now you got to figure out what to make and put it in this dish, how much salt, how much cheese, how much this, how much that. Hopefully you get it right, and then bring it out and taste it, and you're like, well, that, whatever. Your chances of coming back to that restaurant would be very slim.
Right.
And I started to think about that in terms of a facility that is semi-private or that spends a lot of time with their clients and provides all of that expertise and experience, how that would affect the client's overall results and subsequent turnover rate for that facility. What other industry is like that? You think about it in terms of a commercial gym. It's literally like an accountant or a pilot or a school teacher or a doctor. You're going in and looking at all of this equipment and just trying to figure it out by either a video you've seen, some piece of knowledge that your high school coach gave you, what you think you want, and you're just pushing and you're just chest pressing every day. And just, what other industry is like that?
Right.
Where everything is just kind of laid out and it's kind of, you're just like winging it. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, maybe I'm on the wrong track. It's almost like if you're going to a gym, it's almost like going to a supermarket. So then you've got to go and just figure it all out.
More or less, but
if you're going to like live, it's more like going to that restaurant where you've got
the energy,
there, right.
the workout, the expertise.
Right.
You have coaches who are taking you through. And when you look at a different type of setting, it's all of the equipment is laid out there for you.
Right.
And a lot of times, most people, and I'm just judging by the feedback that we get. It's like, yeah, I go to this gym or that gym. I don't even need to name names. I go to this gym or that gym. And how long have you been going there? I don't know, for about like 3 months. Well, have you seen anything change? Not really. Well, what do you do? Pretty much the same thing every time I go in. Are we really setting up clients for success, right?
Right.
If I'm going to build a house, I'm going to go to an architect or a construction company that's their specialty. Not just I'm not going to Home Depot.
So would you say putting together a workout is like building like a nice dish?
Exactly.
Okay. So then like you've got many dishes here. So if you're more into like I'm in the mood to eat obstacle racing,
right,
you can go to OCR Fit, or if you want the boot camp type of thing.
Or the alternative is going to a set of monkey bars and going, all right, let me just figure this out.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
More or less, you're putting it on the I don't want to use the term expert, but the professionals in that industry,
right,
to ensure that you get the absolute best result. Imagine if surgery was like that. If you just walked into a room and you had scalpels and stuff everywhere, like, let me just figure this out, right? Hopefully I'll get it right.
They've had restaurants where you put all the food together and then they cook it for you.
Right.
That never works out well for me because I like these things individually, but I don't know how to put them together in a right way. So I'm like, this tastes horrible. Like, they'll cook it up for me, but I need someone to get that, mixed together. So
right.
This goes with this and that goes with that.
Right.
Instead of me choosing. That's why I'm not the chef or the person that makes the menu.
You can see why it would be challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Now, kudos to those that go to those facilities that either have a good background, it works great for them.
Right.
Or someone who maybe is getting training from someone else who brings a prescribed workout already in. There still could be a risk of injury, but ultimately, if we're looking to make a massive impact in our community, how much greater are the chances for a client to succeed if, much like walking into a good restaurant, when you walk in, you're greeted, you check in, the energy is provided, the community. Imagine going to a restaurant and eating with all your friends instead of eating by yourself, right? What are the chances you're going to come back?
Yeah.
The workout is provided for you. You have someone standing over you, making sure that you're doing things the right way. They're measuring you, or you're checking your progress overall, and making suggestions about how you can get better in each and every facet, including the exercise, recovery, and nutrition. I don't know. I really think about it in terms of what are the chances of a client succeeding at a facility where the equipment is provided but the direction is not, and comparing that to somewhere where it is a little bit more structured, and you're leaving the service to that of the professional. Just come in with an appetite to get better. Just come in with a desire to say, I want to improve my life. That's all you need.
Right. And
we'll take care of the rest.
And I think even there, like with some restaurants, if you go in and it's just the same thing every time, like the good restaurants will switch things up, introduce new items. And I think that if you're going, like just looking at the workouts, I don't think there's been a workout since I've been coming here that's the same.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you have similar facets of different parts, but you're training for the same type of race for OCR. But you're not like, well, here we go again. We did this yesterday or last week, or, it's like it's the same exact thing, So I think that's great, too. That's going to get people to come back because there's variety. It's like I'm not having to come up. Like if I'm going to a gym and trying to decide, I'm going to go with what I know. So I am just doing that pumping.
That's what I mean. And it's not that if I have a math question, I'm coming to you. You're the expert. Like you're the guy. You're the professional. I'm going to be like, hey, I'd like to pay you because I want to make sure that it's right, and I want to make sure the result that I get is the absolute best that I can.
Which is funny that you just kind of brought it around because you were asking what I think about when I run, and you were thinking about like what you were just talking about, and because this is your business, and I have thought about ways that I could. Oh man, I got a really good way I can teach factoring polynomials. Like I'm
Bam.
and then I got to run home, and when I get home, like write it down because I'm like, this is a different way that maybe these kids that don't get it will get it.
There you go.
So I guess we all think about whatever we're passionate about while we're running.
You got it.
And that's what I think too. Is like when you go on these long runs, that's the great thing because sometimes we don't just sit back and think, and just give our brain a chance to just explore, and just we're always on the go, 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 and almost in that like just mode of doing the next thing and on to the next thing, and we're just almost like an autopilot.
Always having to be stimulated, though.
Yeah.
That is something that I recognized recently, and my wife Danielle would probably agree with me. I am in love with Bluetooth headphones, specifically Bose. Seriously, I love them.
Yeah.
They're awesome and they're amazing, and they allow me to be hands-free while I'm talking or listening. I love podcasts, obviously. I love music. I love, media. I like to be able to passively listen to things. I think that's what's interesting about podcasts is that you don't have to actively be sitting somewhere and watching a TV.
Right.
It's a passive form of media. So I can be running, and I can also at the same time be getting, a bunch of really, really good information on either business or being an entrepreneur or something health and wellness related. Or if I need a break, I mean, we all listen to a Joe Rogan podcast or something similar. But it allows me to multitask, and for a male, that is very challenging.
Yeah.
So,
how often would you say you go just run without headphones?
I don't.
You don't?
The end. Here's how bad it is. You ready? This is how bad it is. It's so bad that if I can't get my pair of headphones here, I have been known to go to the Circle K and buy a $7 or $12 pair of the worst headphones ever, just to make sure that I have something.
Wow.
But I love music, though, at the same time. I'm super eclectic with music. I love it. I love the energy. I don't know. That's just my thing. But yeah, I have been known to buy some really cheap headphones.
So there it is. Dale will not run unless he's listening to
I
something.
know. It's just the way that it is right now.
So if you want to beat him in a race, you got to take his electronics. Or he might chase you down for them. So
how about this? I ruined it. This will tell you again. This is my third pair of headphones like this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what do you do during an OCR when you don't wear headphones?
Okay, that's right. No, I don't wear headphones when I'm doing OCR races.
So what do you do? Hum to yourself?
Run hard. Run hard and a mantra. And like I told you before, I feel like I end up like coaching if I'm not focused on what I'm doing, I'm like trying to build up other people around me, honestly.
Right.
That's what I feel. And it just happens. I do not plan on it.
Mhm.
Someone runs past me, of course I want to chase them down, but
Right.
I'm kind of encouraging them at the same time. I did, however, have a 5K a 5-miler that I was wearing headphones for, and I got to the end, which there was like 200 or 300 meters left, and I started sprinting.
Yeah.
And I passed the guy that was directly ahead of me.
Mhm.
And then I started screaming at the next guy right at the finish line, "I'm coming for you! I'm coming for you!" Those are the endorphins kicking in. Again, I had to apologize. I'm sorry about that.
Children started running away, screaming in terror. Mom, someone's coming after me.
Oh, man. It's so crazy. Can I tell you something cool that happened?
What's that?
Dude, we had a great event here the other night, and it was something we had planned out for a long time. Did you see on any social media the women's night that we had?
I did. Yeah.
I mean, I am wearing a pink
Yeah.
live training center women's night shirt right now, so.
I saw it looked like a really good event. At first I was offended I wasn't invited, but then when I found out it was a women's event, I understood.
There were 2 males here. One
Yeah.
of them was me, and the other one was Randall Wagner from the GNC, talking about supplements.
Okay.
It was so amazing, honestly.
So you didn't see me out in the bushes?
No, I
Okay,
didn't.
good,
I didn't
good.
see you. I didn't see you. But it was very, very cool, and it was something that we had planned for a while, and something that had been on my heart, and wanting to bring people together. We've realized recently how our boot camps are much like a Baptist church. Everyone comes at the same time,
Yeah.
and they try to sit in the same pew or the same place, and some of them have never even met each other. So.
So is that what this was about, is kind of getting people that maybe don't go to the same class or in the same class don't talk to each other to kind of communicate? Like, tell me about the event.
Well, what we do hear a lot about it is about healthy relationships, right? We've talked about that. Not only a healthy relationship with other people, but a healthy relationship with yourself. And sometimes it's hard to do that. In reality, a majority of our clients here, they're not going home to an environment that is super healthy. Now, I'm not saying it's unhealthy or toxic. I just mean it's very possible that their family or their life outside of here isn't one that is 100% conducive to losing weight or, eating the right things or exercising or having a healthy mind. So a lot of times this is the support group. And it will work as a support group as long as people know that each other exist. We have about 40 different class options, like traditional fitness classes here on a weekly basis. And they start as early as 5:30 and as late as 5:45 p.m. But it's funny because they always come to the same class. So they never even, we've been growing and growing, but no one has ever met each other.
Yeah.
So it was, an opportunity for healthy women to come and meet other healthy women. And that for our community is a big deal. You have to know you're not alone in this. Like this is how we do life. It's through relationships. And the other part was to come and get a workout designed specifically for women, targeting shoulders, thighs, glutes, stomach, bum, 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 led by women, right? And then it was also to inform and inspire. And we had a couple different speakers. Meredith spoke. She's a client here, also an ambassador. She spoke on nutrition. She did a great job, made it super practical. We also had another ambassador. Her name is Cynthia here. She was able to speak on just her story and, have people leave inspired. My wife actually spoke and she closed, talked a lot about self-image and gave some challenges. And then, of course, we had a gentleman, Randall Wagner, who was here talking about supplementation. So it was a place and a time, and we fed everybody. Come on.
Nice.
But it was a place and a time where healthy women could come together from our community and even outside of our community, could come together, meet each other, learn about one another, fellowship together, work out together, eat together, get educated and informed and inspired, and then leave with new relationships.
That's great. You have any plans to follow up or have maybe like groups like online that maybe people that don't necessarily have the schedule where they would be able to go to the same class together, but maybe they met that night can communicate?
We actually, one of the challenges, I was super proud of everyone that spoke and everyone that was a part of that, because it takes, you've seen some of the events that we put on, and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make something like this pop. And Danielle issued this little challenge. She made everyone pull names, and it all had the name of another client, and that had to be there. I forgot what the term that she used, but it was basically like a new healthy friend that they were to think about or pray about, and they would keep that name and they would text, and like an accountability partner.
Okay.
Excuse me, almost. And so it just gave people an opportunity to meet one another and, again, leave inspired. We're going to have a men's night coming up, too, dude.
Oh, man.
Oh, yes.
That could be trouble.
Oh, yes. So it'll be pretty similar, but everything will be revolving around the male. Will be burping contests and, all sorts.
Can I wear a shirt?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. All right, perfect. But it's a blessing to be able to do this, and it's a blessing to be able to go out to these different events and to host these different events as a means of just improving our community and continuing to push our mission.
That's great. Any races coming up that you're sponsoring or putting your name in the hat in? I know that because you just did the last week's race, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of local 5Ks, I believe, that we're going to be a part of. In a couple weeks, I'm actually going to be doing the warm-up for a local one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we'll be able to get our name out there a little bit and to keep it, to keep things moving in the right direction. That was one of our things this year, is to get out into the community more and just kind of make a presence there and continue to inspire and educate people. And, we've been really, really blessed for everything that we've gotten so far and been able to be a part of.
That's great.
It's fantastic, sir. So I want to thank you ultimately for coming back in here. It's been an absolute blast and a pleasure. You were on the very first 2 episodes. How about that?
That means you have to name the trophy after me, like Vince Lombardi won the first 2 Super Bowls, right? So
the OCR Police Trophy, is that what it's going to be called?
I don't know. There's no trophy, so I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, last time we got your 38 up on the board, so I won't make you do push-ups again.
I mean, if you want me to,
We'll keep that for the next.
right.
Yeah, listen, I was coaching the OCR class that you were just in, so I know you've been pushing pretty hard. But I want to ultimately thank you for being a part of this the last couple of episodes. You've been an absolute blast, and I look forward to doing this again in the future, Jay.
Definitely. I'm always up for talking.
All right. On behalf of myself and Jason Williams, we are signing off episode 2.
Bye.